There is no single morning when Rome wakes up and realizes it has become something else. No decree is read aloud. No ceremony marks the end. The same streets fill, the same institutions convene, and the same titles continue to be used, as if continuity itself could somehow hold back what has already begun to change. Yet, beneath that familiar surface, the direction has shifted in ways that cannot be undone. In the months following Caesar's death, Rome does not return to equilibrium. It leans forward, pulled by forces that had been building for years. Ambition, exhaustion, consolidation, the need for stability after prolonged conflict, and the quiet erosion of systems that once distributed power more broadly. Welcome to the Mammoth in the Room podcast, where we share real-life stories about leadership and their underlying human behavior rooted in science and research. We unpack and interpret the evolutionary forces behind it to help you to better lead your people for outstanding business results. Welcome back to the Mammoth in the Room, where we explore leadership lessons that stand the test of time, using history and neuroscience to explain the human behavior behind pivotal decisions. Because those same patterns still shape how leaders and teams succeed or fail in organizations today. I'm Nicholas Bocconi, CEO of Mammoth Leadership Science. At first, what unfolds after Caesar's death looks like a contest between individuals. Alliances form around personalities, not structures. Marcus Antonius, better known to history as Mark Antony, Caesar's trusted general, political ally, and one of the most formidable operators in Rome, moves quickly to shape the emotional response of the people. He understands instinctively what many leaders still underestimate today. In moments of uncertainty, control rarely belongs first to the person with formal authority. It belongs to the person who can define what the moment means. Opposing him are men like Brutus and Cassius, who believed they had acted to restore the Republic. Yet, what they encounter instead is a system that no longer responds to intention in the way they imagined. Their victory fragments almost immediately, not because their reasoning lacked internal logic, but because the environment in which that logic once made sense has already changed. As tensions rise, Rome falls back on a familiar mechanism, the concentration of power in times of crisis. A new arrangement emerges, the second Triumvirate, an uneasy alliance between Antony, Lepidus, and a young figure who, at first glance, seems strangely out of place among such seasoned power players. Octavian. At this stage, he is not yet Augustus. He is young, politically inexperienced, and largely unknown to the wider public compared with the giants around him. But he carries something profoundly valuable in a Rome increasingly organized around loyalty, symbolism, and personal allegiance. He is Julius Caesar's adopted son and legal heir. That changes everything. In older Republican Rome, legitimacy flowed more clearly through institutions. In the Rome Caesar leaves behind, legitimacy increasingly flows through association, perception, and inherited symbolic power. Octavian understands this remarkably quick. He does not waste energy trying to recreate what was. He studies what is emerging and begins adapting himself to it. The Triumvirate moves decisively. Caesar's assassins are pursued, confronted, and ultimately defeated at the Battle of Philippi. Brutus and Cassius die not as architects of restoration, but as men whose world has already vanished beneath their feet. What remains is not stability. It is transition. Over time, the alliance itself begins to fracture. Antony's ambitions and personal trajectory pull him eastward, eventually into his famous political and romantic alliance with Cleopatra of Egypt. Octavian, by contrast, stays anchored in Rome, building not with spectacle, but with patience. Where Antony projects force, Octavian constructs legitimacy. Where others react to events, he shapes the conditions in which events unfold. And gradually, without a single theatrical rupture, he consolidates control in a way what feels less like conquest, more like resolution. To understand why this matters, we need to pause for a moment and clarify what exactly was changing. The Roman Republic was not a democracy in the modern sense, but it was a system built on distributed power. Authority moved between elected officials, aristocratic families, military influence, and the Senate. It was messy, competitive, often unstable, but the central principle was that no single individual should permanently dominate the system. Power moved, it was negotiated, contested, resisted. The Roman Empire, as it emerges under Octavian, looks deceptively similar from the outside. The Senate still exists, titles remain, public rituals continue. But functionally, something fundamental has changed. Power no longer circulates in the same way. It stabilizes around one enduring center. That center is Octavian. And when he becomes Augustus, it is not merely a personal rebrand. The title itself matters. Augustus carries connotations of reverence, elevation, sanctioned greatness. Importantly, it avoids the politically toxic language of kingship, something Romans deeply distrusted. It allows extraordinary power to be centralized while preserving the comforting appearance that traditional Rome still exists. This is not the destruction of the Republic in the cinematic sense. It is transformation. And it works because it aligns with what human systems under prolonged stress often seek most desperately: predictability. Looking back, it is tempting to make this story about extraordinary individuals alone: Caesar, Brutus, Antony, Octavian, but that reading misses the deeper truth. Caesar did not break the Republic. He revealed that it was already under pressures it could no longer absorb. The assassination did not stop those pressures. It accelerated them. And Augustus did not create an entirely new system from nothing. He gave shape to the form that emerging reality demanded. This is how systems evolve, not usually through one dramatic event, but through the accumulation of incentives, fears, adaptations, and human responses that slowly reshape what becomes possible, then acceptable, and eventually inevitable. And this is where the story of Julius Caesar becomes something far bigger than Roman history. It becomes a repeating human pattern. All right, what does this leave us with as modern leaders as we close this entire journey? If I had to distill the life of Julius Caesar, the fall of the Republic, and the birth of empire into 3 enduring lessons, they would be these. First, power changes the brain long before it changes the org chart. Modern neuroscience gives us important clues here. As leaders accumulate authority, status, and control, feedback often becomes less candid while the brain's reward systems continue reinforcing confidence and certainty. Dopamine associated with reward and anticipation can make successful leaders increasingly confident in their own interpretations, sometimes beyond what reality justifies. Social status can also reduce sensitivity to corrective social cues. Put simply, the more power leaders gain, the easier it becomes to mistake reduced resistance for better judgment. We watch this dynamic repeatedly across Caesar's story. This is not a moral failing, it is a human vulnerability, which means wise leaders deliberately build friction, dissent, and truth-telling into their systems. Second, systems under pressure drift towards simplification because human beings are wired to prefer certainty over prolonged ambiguity. When uncertainty rises, the brain's threat detection systems become more active. Ambiguity is cognitively expensive. Prolonged instability is psychologically exhausting. Teams, organizations, and even nations therefore become more willing to trade complexity for clarity, even if that clarity arrives through concentrated power. Rome did not become empire because everyone suddenly loved centralized authority. Rome became empire because exhaustion made stability emotionally attractive. That lesson matters enormously for modern leadership. Third, removing visible individuals without addressing invisible dynamics changes less than we think. The conspirators believed eliminating Caesar would restore balance. But systems are not held together only by personalities. They are sustained by incentives, norms, habits, information flows, identity structures, and shared psychological assumptions. When those deeper mechanisms remain intact, removing one person simply creates space for the same forces to reorganize under someone else. From an evolutionary leadership perspective, this makes perfect sense. Leadership is rarely just about the person at the top. It is a relationship between leaders, followers, and context. Followers do not passively receive leadership. They help shape the kind of leader that emerges. In threatening, unstable, or conflict-driven environments, people often become more receptive to stronger, more dominant, more decisive figures because the human brain is wired to seek safety and certainty under perceived threat. That means changing the leader without changing the underlying fears, incentives, culture, or followership expectations often solves far less than we imagine. In some cases, the system may even produce a successor who is more aligned with those harsher conditions than the leader who came before. The deeper leadership lesson is this. If you want a different kind of leadership to emerge, you must change the conditions that followers are responding to. Otherwise, the same behavioral patterns return, just wearing a different face. The Republic did not fall in a single dramatic moment. It adapted step by step until it became something else. And in that transformation, individuals did not stop change. They accelerated it. Because, as we often say here, history does not repeat itself. Human behavior does. All right. This was it again for today and for the Julius Caesar series. If this journey through Rome, power, leadership, and human behavior resonated with you, I would truly appreciate if you would subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with someone in your network. And while this chapter closes, the next one is already taking shape. In our next series, we'll step into a different era, a different court, and a different battlefield altogether. If you think power politics, strategic maneuvering, national survival, ambition, influence, and the art of outlasting rivals are somehow exclusively male territory, think again. Our next historical journey will follow the life of a remarkable woman whose story may challenge some of your assumptions about leadership more than Julius Caesar ever did. I won't reveal her name just yet, but trust me, you will want to be here for that one. And lastly, if you're interested in more, you can order my book. It has the same title as this podcast, The Mammoth in the Room. It offers a practical roadmap how great leaders and their teams embrace evolutionary truths for outstanding business results. And it does that in 3 sections: on people, on strategy, and on implementation. Until next time, lead wisely, think critically, and don't let ancient instincts quietly hijack your modern leadership. I'm Nicholas Pocconi, and this is The Mammoth in the Room. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you on the next episode of The Mammoth in the Room.